Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Squared Triangle. I didn't think we are going to get to another one before another pay-per-view, but here we are.
We had a viewer request from Nick Opalewski, who messaged us on our Without Context Facebook page, which is something that we don't follow. If you do want to get in contact with us, Twitter was probably the best place to do that. But he wanted us to review the 1991 Royal Rumble. And we're going to review it, and we have some thoughts. And this isn't going to be an episode, going at Nick about it, because it is definitely an old school style pay-per-view, but boy, do we have some thoughts about this one.
This pay-per-view did 440,000 buys, which means 440,000 people spent, what was it, $30 back then to watch it?
Yeah. About $39.99.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And I mean, in terms of people in this pay-per-view, like there are a lot of the classic names, but I think a lot of that classic namesake comes from nostalgia, because it's definitely not from performance a lot of the times. I think generally, as we go through these matches, I think the match of the night for probably all three of us is the opening match with the Rockers versus Orient Express, which is an awful name to begin with, but the fact that we can just see the beginnings of Shawn Michaels' greatness is superb.
If I'm honest, I would say I would also give like an honorable mention to the $1 Million Man and Virgil versus the Rhodes father and son, only because there is some storyline in there. We'll get to it.
We'll get to some storyline, and Dustin Rhodes is 22 in that match, and you can already tell just how great of a wrestler he's going to be. This was before Gold Dust. This was before he went to WCW. This was his last match in WWF, before him and his dad went to WCW in the early 90s. This was their leaving match, which is why they took the pinfall. But yeah, I mean, he's going to come back as Gold Dust, and the rest, even to this day, is still wrestling. It's insane.
Yep.
And
go ahead.
And also, $1 Million Man. This pay-per-view really highlights just how great he was as a villain in this era.
It was good.
He was the top villain in this era for a reason.
I have some notes for that match, because I like the angle post-match too. Like, I think everything with Virgil was just great at the end of that. A little uncomfortable at times, but I think the payoff was good, and we'll talk about it. But let's put this pay-per-view into some context. And we're going to go from context as a culture, because we did not do any research leading up to this pay-per-view. This is 1991. This is about the era of the first Gulf War. And
this is 2 days after Desert Storm.
Yes, 2 days after Desert Storm, and boy, are they really milking that patriotism in this pay-per-view.
Yeah.
I don't know how far before Desert Storm all these storylines started, but with Sergeant Slaughter being the Iraqi sympathizer, I mean, it's definitely something that is just old school WWF bullshit.
There was a segment in a Raw previous to this. I think it was just the Raw before this, the Go Home Raw.
Yeah.
Where Sergeant Slaughter opens a present in the middle of the ring, and it's the boots he's wearing to the match, and he says they're from Saddam Hussein himself. Like, oh boy.
Yeah, we'll get into it. But let's just go through. This is actually a pretty small card compared to modern day wrestling. It's only about 3 hours long, but boy, do those 3 hours definitely feel like 3 hours. And a majority of this pay-per-view, I think an hour and 15 minutes of it, is dedicated to the Royal Rumble itself. So you got to fill 2 hours with 5 or 6 matches, and you just can't do that back in the 90s. There was a lot of promos in this pay-per-view.
Well, also, one of those matches kind of ended early, and we'll get to that too.
We'll get to why a 20-minute match ended at 12 minutes. But so we start the show. There is a dark match before it. They don't have it on the actual recording. But we start off with Gorilla Monsoon and Piper as our commentary team. And I think you mentioned something about this in your notes, is that there's always a very stark contrast between commentators. There's a face and a heel. But it seems like this whole commentary team is USA, USA.
This commentary team is very much USA, I will say that there's the I actually think Gorilla Monsoon was kind of like more the heel commentator this go around.
Yeah, Piper was definitely embracing his like face side during this commentary. And it was great. There were some good moments on the commentary. Yeah, I put a note, like, Piper's just wonderful in his promos. There's a reason why he's considered one of the best promos in wrestling history, because he just has that energy to go with it.
And Piper was just selling everything so well in that pay-per-view. You know, he was just animated, you know, vibrant. You know, when the stuff that happens, he would just like react to it in such an angry, and in a classic angry Piper way. Yeah. I mean, he was on fire in his pay-per-view.
He was really good.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was. A little side note that I made here. At the time that this came out, Dave Meltzer said that this was the best Royal Rumble out of all of them so far, and I want to see where this falls on that list now, because I'm pretty sure it's going to be near the bottom.
This is only the fourth Royal Rumble. The bar is low.
The bar is in hell. This was before the winner of the Royal Rumble even got a title shot. So we're seeing all of this pre-modern Royal Rumble that we know. So let's get into this first match, because I think this was probably all of our favorite matches out of these matches that we had. We start with the Fink, which was amazing seeing him. I completely forgot about
Howard Finkel.
The match is the Orient Express, which is an awful name, versus the Rockers.
I'm just going to call them the Express throughout this entire fucking thing.
Managed by Mr. Fuji, which this is just pure late 80s, early 90s WWF racism. And we're not going to sugarcoat that. Like, there are some pretty racist gimmicks in this Royal Rumble. And
the man has like a tuxedo and a little bowler hat. I don't know how much more.
The motherfucker looks like Odd Job.
Yeah, Odd Job from Golden. I was about to say,
he looks like Odd Job.
007.
But this is pure rocker. This is pure Rockers. This is years before their breakup. I think their breakup was 92.
Well, 1992.
1992. Yeah, so this is a full year. We know Shawn Michaels is just one of the greatest wrestlers in history, and you can see it here, even in his tag team performance. There are moments in this match that I was impressed by Marty Jannetty. I don't think he gets enough respect. There was one moment though where no matter how much he tried to cover it up, he missed 2 back-to-back drop kicks on people, and they still just fell over. But there were moments where I'm like, man, Marty Jannetty probably deserves a little more for what he brought to this tag team. It wasn't just Shawn carrying this tag team.
It was, the narrative skews over the decades since this. Because Marty Jannetty was always a solid wrestler. It's not like he was a bad wrestler by any stretch.
He was never going to be a top card guy, but he definitely would have earned his place. He would have earned his place in the middle card easily. Yeah.
He was never a star, but he was pretty good.
And on top of that, he had like a short little Intercontinental title run, which was like in 1993 or so, when he actually did beat Shawn Michaels for the title. And Marty Jannetty was just like a solid mid-card worker. You know, he was never going to be pushed as a top guy, but you know, he would just kind of add to whatever promotion he was in.
Yeah. This is your basic 90s tag team match. Face tries to get in to help his ally. The ref is really focusing on him to get out of the ring, so the heels get into the ring and double team the other face.
Yep.
Tanaka is kind of a forgotten wrestler for WWF, but he was very solid in the ring. There was a lot of stuff in here that I would like to see come back. I mean, some of the pressure point submission holds were really good. I believe from, who do I have here?
There's Kato and Tanaka. So
I think it was from Tanaka. I didn't put a name, but like there was like pressure point submission holds, which was very interesting to see. And you don't really see a lot of that.
Side note, Kato was Paul Diamond under a mask.
Yeah, it's a white guy.
It's a white guy.
Because see, back in those days, you know, it was kind of common for wrestling companies to just throw a mask on a white dude and just say, "Hey, he's Asian," you know. So,
oh my god, it's
WCW did this with Jamie Noble and the Young Dragons as well.
If I had a count of how many times I groaned during this pay-per-view at like certain things, like nothing to Nick. Like, we're doing this for a viewer, and this is the first viewer request, and we love the idea that we have a viewer request. But man, if we get more of these old ones, these are going to be like, all right, let's expect some things now.
I think if we get more older, we get like some more older ones like WCCW stuff. I'm gonna be like, all right, well let's crack open a couple cold ones and go through this together.
Get the beers out. We're gonna need them.
Yeah, the old Georgia Championship Wrestling stuff had some moments. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
There's something I'm going to touch on when we get to talking about Virgil, because it was what happened after he left WWF. There was a certain match that he went into that when I researched it and read it, I was like, there's no way this company allowed this. Like, we'll get to it. But yeah, I mean, this is your just opening match, 15-minute tag team match. Mm-hmm. The ending is a little weird for me because Marty's the legal man, but Shawn just comes into the ring and the ref doesn't stop him. And then Marty pins the guy after the interference, and the ref doesn't like call anything on it.
It looks like they're trying a double team, they're doing double teams. The Express, but what I think happens is Shawn is trying to like stop it on one end, and they just completely no sell it, and he just all right, screw this, and he goes to the other side.
Well, yeah, he comes in, he's not tagged. The ref doesn't say anything. And then he gets the guy off of Jannetty, and Jannetty rolls up Kato for the pin.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he just watched as Shawn walked into the ring. Like, it was a really weird, like, noticeable finish that had me going, I think there was a missed call here on something.
Probably.
Right. But the thing is, with the finish, though, it's like, it was kind of cool looking because I think it was, it was Pat Tanaka that had, I think it was Marty in the slingshot. Yeah, he kind of like slingshots him over, and he kind of slingshots, and Marty just kind of flips over and rolls Kato up into a sunset for a victory.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool looking, even though it was a weird little spot.
Yeah,
but you know,
there were some things in here that I really liked. I liked when they went for the backslide pin attempt, and there was actually like a struggle to get the pin down. Like the guy wouldn't go down. There was the slingshot into the chop on Jannetty, and it was some really cool like tag team maneuvers. And it was stuff that I wouldn't mind seeing come back in certain ways, you know?
I also love the Rockers double drop kick whenever they did it. It looked pretty.
It looked really good, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just a really good classic tag team match. And you're seeing shades of how good Shawn Michaels will be. It's just a shame that the other three guys don't really have their same place in history.
I think the only other note I really have about this match is that they don't mention either of the Express by name the entire match.
No, they just call them
they mentioned Shawn. They just called him the
Express. They don't give them an individual name. It's weird. It is.
They should have just kept them as bad company because that's what they were in the AWA. They were AWA tag team champions. So I mean, it was. I mean, but I got kind of see where it was with the copyright issue. So yeah,
this was definitely during Vince's like I am gobbling up everything.
Yeah, these territories are mine,
and I'm not keeping the names of the guys that made them popular. They're going to be my stuff. They're going to be my Saturday morning cartoon wrestlers, which is exactly what a lot of these characters are. These are Saturday morning cartoons come to life.
This is definitely like the Rock and Wrestling Connection era.
Yeah. Well, so good match. I liked it. I agree with Dave Meltzer on this one. This was the best match on the card. And I will agree with him that the worst match on the card was Coco Beware versus the Mountie.
Oh, God.
But we'll touch on that, too, because there were some pretty funny moments in that match that actually had me laughing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about this promo. It is time for the Macho Man Queen Sherry promo against the Ultimate Warrior.
The Macho King.
The Macho King. This was after his King of the Ring win, I think.
Yeah, I think he had been the Macho King for like 2 years at this point.
So to set the stage for this, Sherry is trying to convince Ultimate Warrior that if he can beat Sergeant Slaughter, if he retains, he will give Macho King a title match. That's the entire purpose of this promo. One of the things that I put a note here before we get started on the weird, I love the old school promos between the wrestlers and the interviewers because it feels like the interviewers are legitimately like concerned for their safety around these wrestlers.
Yes.
Like it was really funny to see like the guy like trying to interview him while like keeping back away from Macho King. Like this man's gonna destroy me if I take a step closer.
Except for Mean Gene though, because I like how Mean Gene always would like sneak diss the heels whenever he was interviewing them.
Yep.
Or he'd say something slick once they were doing it, they wouldn't even catch it.
Mean Gene's a classic. Like he's a classic interviewer.
I love Mean Gene. He was amazing.
I like Mooney. I thought he was a good backstage interviewer. I think that you have to have that one person who's like scared of the wrestlers a little bit, like holding the mic like this.
Yeah,
is basically what he was doing. And yeah, if I had to guess, all three of the people in this promo segment were on cocaine. Like there's that if I had to guess.
Oh yeah, this was very cocaine fueled. It was all over the place.
So she's trying to get Ultimate Warrior to agree to give Macho King a title shot. And it starts becoming like a seduction attempt. And I'll give it to Sherry. She is really like doing this character well. Because if I remember a little bit about Queen Sherry, like this is exactly the kind of character that she was back in the 90s. This is also during that time between where Macho Man left Elizabeth and where they'd reunite, I think a year later. It was either later that year or a year after.
I believe it was SummerSlam 91 when that happened, because it was like they did the match made in hell thing. I remember that trailer so well. But yeah.
I put it here that she basically word fucks Warrior this entire promo.
Yeah. Well, first, she starts off by calling Sergeant Slaughter an honorable man.
It's like, classic heel, heat.
Yeah, and you see the people, like, there's a crowd behind her, which is
also in like a wedding dress.
Yeah.
Like she's in a weird, like crazy wedding dress or something, which is odd.
So the setting I like about the reason I like it so much is that there's a crowd behind them. Yeah. Like Mean Gene and Sherry are right there behind the crowd. And you see the crowd like throwing vitriol at Sherry the whole time.
I made a note about the crowd too during the DiBiase match because somebody legitimately nails DiBiase with a cup of beer, and you see in the background the security run through the crowd to get to him. Like it's wild.
It's great.
Like I just saw like yellow security shirts like running through the crowd to get to that area that it came from. It was wild to see.
There was a line that Sherry mentioned while she was calling out the Warrior before the Warrior actually came out, is that she thinks the Warrior is, quote, yellow from the top of his head to the bottom of his toes.
And we know the Warrior is not yellow because this man comes out rocking the red, white, and blue gear because we are 2 days away from patriotism kicking in.
Yep.
And it's
America.
This is just, if there was a pay-per-view that's just America, that isn't Great American Bash, it's fucking this. Like,
on top of that, this kind of theme runs into WrestleMania as well.
Yeah.
Jesus. Because they had that was like a whole theme of WrestleMania with the Stars and Stripes forever.
She touches Warrior at some point and he does like a weird like sniff of his finger during the promo. Like there's a lot going on in this promo and it goes on for probably entirely too long. Like
Sherry ponders out loud what it might feel like to kiss Warrior's lips. And then she gives him the most docile, like quick peck on the lips. And then Warrior just like
he like smells it. It's by the end
he does the thing where he like looks at the hard camera facing. He's like, what?
Yeah, like Jim Hellwig is probably not completely here tonight. It's
well, we know for sure towards the end of the match he's not completely there.
No, and we'll get to that too because that is a direct build off of I guess this promo in terms of story, which then becomes not storyline. Warrior gives a hilarious no to deny.
No. And it's not just any kind of, he goes into convulsions.
Yeah, he like says no, holds it, convulses. Like this promo is probably 5 minutes longer than it needs to be, and boy does it feel like it.
While Sherry is on her knees
in front of him, crotch level, like it's a whole ordeal.
This is a little uncomfortable.
This was like cocaine. This is cocaine fueled, softcore, and pretty much a lot longer than it should have been.
Yep.
Then we get Macho Man losing his shit in the locker room and running out to find Warrior. He only finds Sherry, and then they both run backstage again. And then we're on to our next match.
Like,
this promo is, there's been a lot of uncomfortable stuff in the last few years of WWE. The whole "This Is Your Life" segments. During the 2000s, we had Eugene, we had Festus. Like, WWE is known for their like what the fuck moments. This, I feel like this is the start of that chain of what the fuck moments.
This is not the start. This is a continuation.
This is, yeah, probably.
we didn't watch it going on.
We didn't watch anything in the 80s before this, so who knows? But this was definitely the most uncomfortable thing in a long time I've ever watched on WWE. And yeah, and this plays directly into a storyline thing later, which we will get to because goddamn Macho King. Next match of the night, big ol' hoss fight. We got the Barbarian who's rocking his best Conan impersonation versus the Big Boss Man who is really over with the crowd.
Yeah, also, the crowd sees a dude in uniform. They're like, "Hey, that guy, that's a good guy."
I think this was during Ray Traylor's like face era.
Yes.
Well, like the crowd was like really behind him, and he's coming out, he's swirling the baton. And
you know what the thing I found weird though? It's like the Big Boss Man, he has this he has the cop gimmick, and this was right around the time when he was a big face, he was over with the crowd. The Mountie also kind of debuted around this time. It was just, a match later on in the party.
They eventually had that match.
Similar gimmick.
They had that match eventually, which then led to a prison rape joke.
Yeah.
Yep. Ooh. It was a match between the Mountie and Big Boss Man, and the winner gets put in jail.
Oh,
and
yeah.
This was back during that time frame.
There was a lot of cringe back in them days.
Yeah.
I did make a note actually before this match. I did make a note. I'm kind of digging the lavender belt strap that they have on the title.
Yeah, I think it makes it stick out.
Yeah, it makes it stick out. It makes it feel definitely like one of those old school territory belts.
Yeah.
It looked good. I just like the look of it, like aesthetically.
It's not a whole lot for this match though.
No,
the Barbarian spends most of the work in the chest area.
There is minutes of this match that are just in a bear hug. And I'm like, what the fuck? Are you guys that winded already? Like, but we get some like,
there's a point where like moves. There's a point where like Bobby Heenan goes to like get a cheap shot on the Boss Man and he just no-sells it and gets into the ring. He no-sells
it, yeah.
Because Bobby Heenan's managing like 6 people right now.
I made a note about that too. I like how these managers are managing multiple people. Instead of just one person. It'd be like if Paul Heyman had all the heels like as his guys in modern WWE, or if it's like AEW where Stokely's like, hey, or Don Callis. Like he's kind of doing that too now.
And I love the fact that all these heels were utilitarian as well. Like they were these heel managers because they were like they're not just gonna go out, and distract the ref and stuff. Every now and then they'll just like kick somebody in the face, or they'll do or they'll just punch somebody, and they were wrestlers but not really wrestlers. And I mean, they all matches back then.
And they all were wrestlers. I mean, Bobby Heenan was a wrestler back in the territory days.
So was Fuji.
So they were probably feeling a little more comfortable out taking bumps when needed.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is your typical hoss fight. There was a really cool moment in here where Big Boss Man hits Barbarian with an Enziguri, which I was not expecting. I was like, that's different.
That's new.
Hey, Hogan did Enziguris in Japan, and I think he did a Shining Wizard out there too.
Hogan did a lot of technical wrestling in Japan as well. Yeah, he would just do mat wrestling, and it was weird to watch it.
Yeah, so some of the notes I had here, Big Boss Man looks great. Like, I remember him from the Attitude Era, and he was gaining a lot of weight during that time, but here he looks in fantastic shape. Bobby Heenan looks perfectly slimy. This is just a hoss fight between cartoon characters. Like
the finish comes with the Barbarian getting a crossbody of all things.
A crossbody off the top, and then being reversed into like a roll-up pin, which was a very cool transition to finish the match. And I'm guessing
the second roll-up in as many matches.
Yeah, and I'm thinking they wanted it to kind of be like that abrupt because I don't know if Barbarian was on a push or something then, so they didn't want him to like lose definitively. But this was definitely like a finish that kept both guys looking strong at the end of it. I don't know what became of Barbarian after this.
I think he went to WCW
for a little
while.
Yeah. And this is like, I'm thinking about Barbarian now, and I'm thinking about Warlord from the Rumble, and I'm like, they were just doubling up on gimmicks, it felt like, for a lot of these guys.
Oh, he's still alive. Interesting.
Yeah, I was looking up to see if some of these guys were still alive or not. I know we lost Big Boss Man a few years back, I think.
We lost him a while back.
Okay. So at least a few years. I'm still in the ballpark.
Yeah, you're technically correct.
But I mean, yeah, it's a simple match, I guess. I mean, a lot of these matches are simple because we're so used to these complicated matches with, like, you know, spectacle and everything nowadays that we forget that a lot of these matches were just to go out and have a purpose and usually fill a spot on the card or further a minor storyline. And not everything
Sometimes they're not even doing that.
Yeah.
Right?
And sometimes but like a lot of the modern day stuff, it's like, oh, all of our big angles have to have a match on this card for this pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. No, this could have been a feud between Big Boss Man and Barbarian that started 3 weeks ago and they needed to put a match on the card. So after that, we go to our second promo of many for the night. The General Adnan and Sergeant Slaughter promo, which I wanted to reach into my screen and just choke Slaughter because I have no idea why this man is remembered as a legend. Like, this man cannot cut a promo.
He continually calls the Ultimate Warrior the Ultimate
Puke. And it's like,
he so does it
emphasis
so many
on
times.
Also
the Ultimate Puke.
I'm like, he's just kind of, my notes are just like, it's a cheesy as fuck line. He's just kind of guttural. His facial expressions are dumb as hell. Like, and then it cuts back to Ultimate Warrior in his promo, and he's just incoherent as fuck. So,
oh no, he says
these are just a style of promos that we pretty much were, you know, accustomed to back in the day. You know, it was always, you know, loud and animated.
It's loud, it's animated, and it doesn't go anywhere, really.
I remember Ultimate Victor being said a lot in Ultimate Warrior's promo. He also did, like, actual animal snarls, which was weird. Like,
yeah, he always did that. Warrior says that the only people who would follow Sergeant Slaughter are demented, and that he is the ultimate champion and will win, and that will make him the ultimate victor.
Yeah. And then I forget that this was a Royal Rumble. Because I'm expecting the title match to go on last.
Nope.
The title match is match number 3 on the card.
In the middle.
Boy.
And boy, do we have some stuff to talk about in this match.
Yep.
It starts off. It legitimately starts off great. Warrior comes sprinting down like he does, and then they try to double team him, and he runs through the flagpole and clotheslines both of them. And then you have a really good, for America, like, beat down of Sergeant Slaughter for about 5 minutes, choking him on the flag, hitting him with the flagpole.
They have him choking on the white part, crucially.
Yeah, the surrender, like, the white flag is for surrender, so, you know, it's a good, like, thematic thing. The crowd's really behind this just Sergeant Slaughter beat down. And
naturally,
it's fantastic. Then Sherry arrives. And Sherry arrives because of the earlier promo, and she's trying to distract Ultimate Warrior, and that allows Sergeant Slaughter to get some offense in. And there's a really cool moment in this where he locks in, the camel clutch? Is that his submission hold?
He locks in the camel clutch, but
Warrior's
the way he does
feet
it
are
is
outside of the ring.
Yeah,
and the ref doesn't catch it.
Knows it.
So it's like, I'm thinking like, oh, it's setting up for like a false finish. Like Warrior's going to tap, lose the title. It's like, oh no, he was past the ropes. You know, like I'm kind of thinking that's where it's going. And then I have to remember that it's 1991. They weren't that creative yet. So
I have a couple of other notes. I have one where Piper says, we have freedom of speech, so we can say what we can say and do what we want. If I don't like it, I'll get in the ring and do something about it.
Yeah. Piper's on fire on commentary.
And then Monsoon clarifies that Sergeant Slaughter's pro-Iraqi sentiment does not represent the World Order Wrestling Federation or most people in the world.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, guys.
Yeah, it's
See, the amount of heat Sergeant Slaughter had around this time was it was astronomical. I mean, I believe WWE at one point I think they had to get a security detail for Sergeant Slaughter because of the amount of death threats he was getting.
Yeah, this is the area of you'll still get shot if you're a good enough heel. Like MJF would have been killed years ago if he was alive in this era. The man would not have made it past his 20s. Like, the moment he threw that drink on that kid, that audience would have jumped him. Like,
dragged him into the audience and beat the shit out of him. Like, I mean, everybody.
And that's saying, like, he had this kind of heat too, because he legitimately had a beer thrown at him too from the audience during one of the AEW events, and he just like took it and grinned. Like, he knew, like, I have this level of heat. Like,
there's a sign in the crowd in this match that says Gomer is a traitor, which is likely referring to Sergeant Slaughter for Gomer Pyle USMC, or what the fuck is it called? Full Metal Jacket, that came out 4 years ago at the time of this pay-per-view.
Yeah. And
so, depends on which one you're looking at.
They're probably comparing it to the Slaughter being the Marine background and stuff like that. So I have some here. It looks like Sergeant Slaughter is already out of shape despite this like being his heyday. Like, the guy looks like he hasn't wrestled in fucking years. The match stops as they hit a double clothesline on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Macho King and Sherry coming back out. Was it Warrior chases Sherry down the entrance like pathway and gets taken out by Macho King with a light, which is a surprising weapon to use.
Wax him with the light fixture, yeah,
wax him with a light fixture. Well, I think that's probably Randy Savage's personal choice in that it wasn't the assigned weapon to use.
Yeah,
I feel like Macho King had a lot of leeway during this beatdown here.
So there's an interesting thing here is where Warrior's coming back down slowly, and you see
stopping the count.
Slaughter is stopping the count several times, which is something you don't see a lot every day nowadays.
I think we should, though. Like, if the only way you can win the title is by pinfall, why would heels and faces not stop the count? Or is that why they just avoid the ring out count nowadays? A lot of matches don't even have a ring out like count to them. And it's noticeable, like, because when you see a ring count happening, you're like, that's different. Like, yeah, they get back in, and let's see what I have here. Warrior does this like pump up thing. We get another bit of interference, and then Macho King just murks Jim Hellwig with the scepter. You hear the crack audibly. You see it break into pieces. And you see probably the exact moment that Ultimate Warrior gets a concussion. Like,
this is no longer like Ultimate Warrior Macho King. This is Randy Poffo and fucking Jim Hellwig.
He laid a really good shot on Warrior with that helmet, like with that scepter.
Sometime before this pay-per-view, Ultimate Warrior had injured Randy Savage and put him out for 6 weeks. This was Randy's receipt.
Yeah.
And he did this shit on a pay-per-view in a title match halfway through the match.
And got away with it.
This man didn't show up to the Royal Rumble later. This man probably legitimately left the arena.
There's a visual that I remember from this match of like Warrior just like half out of the ropes, just like laying there.
Yeah,
he's out cold.
I think I just messaged you guys on Discord when I was watching this, and I'm like, yo, Randy Savage just put his whole ass into that swing.
Like, he did.
He's like,
he put the good old elbow grease into that one.
He's like, I see a baseball and this is a bat. And that's how he took that swing.
And Warrior's face was the ball.
Yeah.
No, he's like, there's a nail, here's a hammer.
God, and the match still has 10 minutes to go. A pinfall attempt happens and a 3 count happens. And there's a lot of confusion. The announcers don't know what to say. It looks like the people in the ring don't know what to say. And it takes about 3 minutes until we get the announcer saying that by official decision, Sergeant Slaughter wins the wins the world title, which I don't think he was supposed to do.
So, I've looked at interviews with Slaughter later. He's like, hey, get up, warrior, and he like elbows him because he does an elbow drop and he's trying to wake him up with an elbow drop.
Yeah, he's trying to wake him up
cold.
He's trying to wake up an unconscious man by beating him. Like, that's the mindset we're in right now.
Come on, wake up. Here's this concussion I need to give you.
And
while I'm doing so.
And that was the thing. He said in one of these interviews, it's like, we had about 10 minutes left to go, but Randy legitimately knocked out Ultimate Warrior with that swing.
Yep.
And if that's not 90s wrestling, I don't know what the fuck is. Like,
see, and also 90s wrestling, when receipts happen, they happen.
Yeah.
Don't matter what you're doing at the time. Randy was ready for that one.
Yeah, so Sergeant Slaughter wins the title after official decision. Ultimate Warrior, despite probably being concussed, runs out of the ring to hunt down probably Lanny Poffo and not or yeah, he's probably going for the man, not the character at this point in time.
Yeah. That was, I think it's because he was concussed or knocked out. He gets up, the adrenaline rush, and then he runs.
Yeah, the crowd absolutely fucking hates this conclusion.
Yep.
Sergeant Slaughter's playing it up, like they're trying to make the best out of this situation. I'm pretty sure Vince backstage is losing his fucking mind. Yeah, they're doing what they can, and God, just Randy just fucking nails him.
Yep. But it does lead to like a really cool thing where Roddy Piper and Gorilla Monsoon are just absolutely losing their shit on the mic.
Commentary team started losing their fucking mind when they announced
just losing their fucking minds. It was great.
There was a moment where Piper's like he's like, damn it, sorry for my language.
Yeah, Piper is great, accidentally cursing and then apologizing. And moving away from that into match number 4. I don't think the Mountie and Coco Beware were supposed to have a match. I think this was meant to fill that missing 10 minutes.
Yeah, it was a cool down. This was a cool down match from the sheer insanity that everybody just watched and were a part of.
Now, I'm going to say, I don't know what the plan going into this card was. I didn't watch anything before it. I didn't see the official card. Like, hey, here's the plans going into the Royal Rumble this weekend. If they had this Coco Beware Mountie match scheduled, I don't know why. This feels like a match that's like, you go out there and fill 10 minutes. Like,
it's basically an opening match on Superstars. That's what it was. Because Superstars was a big program at the time. That's what it is, an opening match.
Yeah, this was the most like main event, lower mid card fucking talent match.
It's also weird because Coco Beware gets a jobber entrance, which is not something you really want to do when you pay so much money to get a fucking macaw.
The best part of this match was Jimmy Hart yelling at a parrot.
Yes.
There's a lot of dumb things in wrestling that I enjoy. If I had seen this in modern day, I still would have laughed at it. Like, this is just one of those things where I'm like, this is so fucking stupid, but I love this.
There's a moment where the Mountie throws Coco Beware over the ropes, and then he does his like high step, and
Piper's like, is he goose stepping?
No, he's not.
He's Canadian, not German. Like, if there was a German character in that, he would have definitely been goose stepping, and then there would probably been a lot of ring complaints. So, this is easily the worst match on the fucking card. Mountie gets the win. I didn't even write notes for this match besides Jimmy Hart yells at a parrot. Like, that's just how uneventful it was for me.
There's a part where Roddy is Coco like gets like a comeback and starts fighting back, goes for a high crossbody, gets a pin, and then Roddy's like, damn it, excuse me, darn it, you can't win the match without hooking the leg. Yeah,
there's a little bit of like meta commentary from like wrestlers to the commentary team. It's really funny. Yeah, this was just like a nothing match. If this match was planned to be on the card, I don't know why. If I do some research and find out that this wasn't a match on the card, this is definitely like, hey, we need to fill 10 minutes. Go out there and wrestle.
Yeah.
I do like Coco's little arm flapping for some reason, like just being the Birdman. Yeah. I know he was probably a more serious wrestler in the territories. But this is just like this is one of those cases where WWF was just like go out there and be a comedy act, and just kind of it's pure like 90s stuff.
Yeah.
We have a set of promo or recordings before the Ted DiBiase and Virgil versus the Rhodes match. It's a bunch of people just on the sidewalk, kind of wishing the soldiers well. Which is just like another, it's like USA, USA.
And pro USA Iraqi Desert Storm stuff.
It's just jingoism.
And if I okay, yeah, this was during the fucking promo segment. I put my notes here. What the fuck, Pritchard? What is that sunburn? Because Bruce Pritchard in these promos is like just red as shit. And I don't know if this man just like did a darker spray tan or if he's like legitimately sunburned.
Brother Love?
Yeah. Brother Love.
Yeah, no, that's his thing. It's always that red.
Yeah, it's always that red. I saw it. I was like, red. What the fuck, Pritchard? Like
he had this was Brother Love was a wild gimmick back then. Like, yeah, I think it was supposed to be like some take on Jimmy Swaggart, like after his little prostitution bust.
But, yeah, this was after Paul Bearer left.
No, this was right before Paul Bearer came in, because Brother Love was Undertaker's original manager
during the SummerSlam. It was the SummerSlam first appearance, right? Or Survivor. It was Survivor Series the year before, I think.
Yeah, right now at this point in time, it's like 2 months into the Undertaker's long 30-something year run in WWE. But this is 2 months into the Undertaker's run, so we getting very early Undertaker.
This is the 90s, so 10 would make it 2000, almost 40 years.
Yeah.
Like, it's an insane run. And then you think we're seeing people like Dustin Rhodes in this pay-per-view, and the motherfucker's still wrestling.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's in better shape than he's in much
Dustin
better shape.
Rhodes is in insane shape. Like, I saw an Instagram picture from him, and I'm like, this man could just probably beat most people half his age in a fist fight if he wanted to.
Yeah.
Like, this is pure Southern, like, wrestling, like, just muscle structure on this guy. Yeah, it's just a bunch of either plants on the street or just random people on the street being interviewed about Desert Storm. Then we get to another good match. Another good match of the night. I had never seen Ted DiBiase wrestle until this match. I knew of him as a character, but I always felt like he was just one of those like crazy manager types who never wrestled. Those heels that never wrestled. He always got other people to do it for him. It was interesting seeing him actually wrestle. This is a good match. I mean, I feel like anything with Dusty and Dustin Rhodes is going to bring out the best in anybody across from them. I think Virgil's underappreciated in the ring at times. I think the weakest wrestler in this match would have been Ted DiBiase. Like, everybody else seemed very good at what they were doing.
There's a point in this match where Gorilla Monsoon refers to Ted as Virgil's master, which I audibly
there's a lot going on in this match towards Virgil that I'm glad does not happen as much anymore. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but it happens significantly less than this.
Mm-hmm.
So some of it was really egregious.
Even during the promo, like Ted DiBiase's like talking to Virgil as like, you're a hired hand, you know, like it's all this shit from him. You can see like I'm pretty sure the man who is Virgil, I don't know his real name, but he's looking like he's pissed off, and I'm like, that's not character. That's just this man like being angry at how this white man is treating him.
Oh, that's Michael Jones.
Michael Jones? Cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot going on with DiBiase and Virgil, and that's why I like kind of popped for the end of this match, but we'll get to that.
So the finish comes when there is there's a hot tag to Dusty, and then Dusty goes for a bionic elbow, misses, hits the corner where he hurts, and then $1 Million Man rolls him up, and that's the win.
Yeah, because I think I mentioned earlier, this is the match that the Rhodes lose before they both go to WCW. Mm-hmm. Dusty Rhodes got a job as the booker in the early 90s at WCW, and Dustin Rhodes began wrestling over there as well. I think they had, was it was it 7 was the gimmick that I think they were like Vince Russo wanted to give him?
Oh,
or was that
7,
back in,
yeah.
Or was that back in TNA?
Hang on. 7 was WCW.
7 was WCW.
X is saying he's not getting sound.
Oh, back.
All right.
So yeah, this was before the Rhodeses left. And then we have a whole post-match angle between DiBiase and Virgil, which to the satisfying conclusion is again uncomfortable to fucking watch.
Yep.
I mean, extremely uncomfortable to watch.
It's probably,
but,
I can imagine how bad it must have been for a person of color to watch it.
Yeah.
I was uncomfortable watching this fucking shit. I'm like, what the fuck are they doing out there?
like looking back on it now, yes, there's a set of discomfort, but this is the kind of things that WWE did back then.
Yeah,
they kind of did some things with racist undertones to it.
Yep.
This was one of those really kind of blatant, things they did with DiBiase and Virgil, but it did have a satisfying conclusion. And I guess they used that as a platform to kind of split the two.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you have Ted DiBiase cutting a promo about how the only thing that matters is money, and then he starts calling Virgil stupid and everything for hitting him during the match, and then he's telling him to put the belt on him and just continuing to demean and degrade him. Somebody nails Ted DiBiase with a beer, and then you see in the crowd a bunch of yellow security shirts go running by the background, which was very funny to watch. And it's noticeable because I my eyes were drawn to that rather than what was going on in the ring. And as Virgil is presenting the title, he nails DiBiase with it to a huge pop from the audience.
First, he throws it on the ground, and then Ted's like, "No, pick it up."
He picks
it up and clocks him with it.
Looks at it and it just nails DiBiase with the $1 million title. And
I popped for that.
I popped for that. Just to add a little bit on it, he spits on it as he walks away, which is very good too. Piper is going fucking crazy on commentary because the story here is that Piper had been talking to Virgil about leaving DiBiase, so Piper is just going fucking crazy over his friend leaving Ted DiBiase's employment. And it's just like, it's so great just hearing Piper on commentary just go fucking crazy over certain things.
Man, Piper just brought that energy in this pay-per-view. That was, if I could say anything, this was probably one of the best parts about, the Royal Rumble 1991 was Piper's energy throughout this whole commentary. Yep. Him and Gorilla Monsoon.
They were really good. They really played off each other really well.
They did, and they played off a lot of the story that was going on in the ring as well.
Even the shit that they really didn't know.
So we have a really good conclusion to the match. I mean, people who were leaving took the pin. We have a huge pop, a new babyface in Virgil. And then we get to Hulk Hogan.
Oh, God.
We get a promo of Hulk Hogan.
I forgot that this is the depths of Hulkamania in WWF. This is this era.
There is a promo where Hulk Hogan is dedicating this Rumble match to the boys in the Persian Gulf. Previously in the pay-per-view, they mentioned that Hulk Hogan was already going out there to see the boys and girls out there.
Yeah.
So this was already kind of a foregone conclusion as soon as Hulk Hogan got into the fucking ring.
Yeah. I put a note here, the patriotism makes Hulk forget some of his lines. There was a part during this promo where Hulk stops to think about what word he's looking for.
He does this twice.
He does it twice, and then it's
the second time obvious. Funnier.
It's obvious that he has forgotten what the fuck he was about to say. And I'm just like, when's the steroid trial? Another 3 years after this, or something? Another 3 or 4 years?
About 3 years.
Later. It can't come fast enough to get these fucking guys out of this company. Then the promo is interrupted by Mean Gene receiving a report that Sergeant Slaughter is defacing the American flag, because of course he fucking is. Of course he is.
Of course he is.
Oh my god. It's just this is the most heavy-handed theme of this pay-per-view. We can't go 5 fucking minutes without USA, USA. But then again, this is our lives
forever, baby.
This is our lives. This was the shit that we had to grow up with between the Gulf War and Desert Storm to Iraqi freedom in the 2000s. This was just this was the first third of my life, for fucking crying out loud. Like,
yeah. Well,
I'm tired of it.
So keep in mind, not everyone was born in the 80s like the three of us were.
Yeah. I mean, I was late 80s. I was 89. But
yeah, so was I. But I'm saying, like, there's people out there who don't know what Desert Storm was or the Gulf War was.
Yeah, technically, Iraqi freedom after 9/11 was Gulf War II. It was the sequel.
Gulf War II.
We went back.
Gulf War II Electric Boogaloo.
And then that shit lasted for 20 years. So,
yep.
But I've been watching wrestling a little bit longer than you guys have, because I was born in 82, and yeah, there was a lot of zany shit that was going on in the WWF at the time. Like, it was pretty much, in full cartoon mode at this point.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you had WCW being like the more realistic wrestling company, but WWF was just pure cartoonish.
We are
throughout the entire 80s.
We are what, 4 years away from Stone Cold cutting his promo that propels him to stardom.
Yep, something like that.
So this is like the dying age of the cartoon wrestler for the most part before we hit full nonstop Attitude Era.
I have a note as we actually get into the Rumble match proper and get out of all the jingoistic fucking promos and shit.
Yeah.
That Bret Hart pulls number one, and it's good to see that this is still the formula that works even 40 years later.
The workhorse comes out first.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The person who is going to carry this fucking Rumble is the first one to step foot in that ring.
And the second person that comes out is Dino Bravo.
Who you thought was Dio Brando.
Dio Brando. I was like, well, JoJo's came out like 4 years ago prior to this. But no, he's not. He's just an Italian.
He's just an Italian. And I mean, this man looks like he left a mafia meeting and then put on wrestling trunks. He has the slicked back blonde hair. He looks like some fat mafioso. Like, this guy is just hilarious to see. I've never heard of this guy before.
Built like a refrigerator.
Man.
So after this, I did a little bit of research on some of the wrestlers. After this, he passes away. Not right after this, but like down the line.
Yeah.
When he gets out of wrestling, he goes back to organized crime. So it's kind of true.
Yeah.
And then he dies. And then
he was an actual monster.
To go back into mafia life.
Yeah, he was an actual monster.
Like, you can go watch this on Dark Side of the Ring too. Like, they went through in detail with this story. After he left pro wrestling, he went back into the mob, and he was like, I think he was like running illegal cigarettes or something like that.
I mean, I guess, yeah, he was, but I think he is like a Canadian Italian, so I think he's just crossing the border. But at the same time, it's like, you're right, wrestling is best when it's just part of who you are for your character. Yep. But yeah, I had never heard of Dino Bravo. The third person out is Greg Valentine. I know Greg Valentine. I've heard the name. He does not look like I thought he'd look.
No,
he's definitely a Continental champion.
There is an uncomfortably close look at Greg Valentine's ass before the next person comes out.
I have a note here between Greg Valentine and Dino Bravo. This is big meaty men slapping big meaty men, the prototype.
Yep.
And then Dino Bravo is eliminated before number 4 comes out, which is, I guess he had stuff to do. Sure. Paul Roma comes out. He's the model. Paul Roma, I think, is what his little gimmick is.
That's Rick Martel.
That's Martel.
He'll come out in a sec.
Yeah. Paul Roma is the red and black trunks, I think, if I remember correctly now. Nothing of interest really happens, and then we get Texas Tornado, which I was surprised to hear from you that this is a Von Erich, and I'm like, of course, Vince is shitting on his legacy. Like, you can just call him.
Of course, he's not going to be Kerry Von Erich in the WWF at the time.
The Von Erich name is not going to exist in WWF.
No, he's just a Texas Tornado.
It's a Texas Tornado,
and he looks like a ripoff. He looks like a ripoff Ultimate Warrior with like leg tassels and everything. Like, it's weird to see.
At some point, there is 4 people with monocolored trunks and boots, and you don't know who the fuck is who except for Bret Hart.
I think you pointed out this looks like it's Bret Hart versus 3 randomly generated wrestlers.
Yes.
Like
3 WWE 2K creator wrestlers.
Yeah.
Yep.
From the 80s.
When your custom character stands out in a cutscene. Not much happens, and then Rick Martel comes out, and Rick Martel is impressive in this match because he sets the record during this pay-per-view for the longest lasting in a Royal Rumble at 52 minutes. Like, that's the record set by him after this Rumble ends. And I think recently, we've seen that being broken in a lot of ways. I think Gunther just won. I think
the current record is Rey Mysterio.
I think they eliminated Gunther before Rey Mysterio's length was removed. It just made Gunther look fucking dominant at the Royal Rumble. It was wild.
Yeah.
And then we get something that made me say, God damn it.
Out comes Tony Atlas.
Tony Atlas rocking the whole savage African Saba Simba character. And I was like, this man was a professional bodybuilder. I think he was a wrestler in the territories. This man has a great physique.
He was one half of the first Black World Wrestling Federation tag team champions with Rocky Johnson. When he came back, they gave him this shit.
And I know that in our Discord thing, this made you feel some ways, X.
Oh man,
so,
I don't want to go deep into this, but like I said, this is one of those things where this was right around the time where, again, WWE did some things with a little bit of racial undertones. This one bothered me a little bit,
especially somebody like Tony Atlas, who is capable of. Tony Atlas is a great wrestler's name. I mean, we have Jake Atlas, like, in recent things, and it's like, you can have Tony Atlas and still be a great performer. You don't have to do this shit or give him a gimmick.
I mean, yeah, but and I read somewhere in the interview where he said that I think, as a matter of fact, or was it a panel I went to where Tony Atlas was on there? It was a panel I went to. I think it was at Comic-Con. He did mention somehow that this gimmick did save him life because he was on a downward spiral at the time with drugs and alcohol and whatnot. And I get all that. I really do. But for whatever reason, I just was not feeling this at all.
I'm not going to look back at it favorably with a modern lens.
I can't.
If you go into WWE nowadays as a Black wrestler and you're given this gimmick, like, this is a lawsuit waiting to happen.
This is a Twitter mob, cancel culture thing waiting to happen.
That limo that blows up with Vincent, that will actually happen.
Like seriously.
And then Bushwhacker.
There's no way you can do a gimmick like this.
And the thing is, he doesn't even last because Bushwhacker Butch is the next entry in. And by the time he's entered the ring, Tony Atlas has been eliminated.
Yeah.
Like, it's absurd. I said for Bushwhacker Butch, hell yeah, I love dumb characters. The Bushwhackers are always going to have like a warm spot in my heart. They're just ridiculous as comedy characters. And they definitely gave the Dudleys their costumes. I would say
sure.
The camo pants and the tank tops. Like, this is definitely like the Dudley boys ripping this off.
The Bushwhackers walked so the Dudleys could run.
This was, I also forgot, we'll get to it later. This is also the Royal Rumble where Luke shows up and then is promptly eliminated, which is very funny. 4 seconds.
And then Santino breaks that record later.
Yeah. So Butch comes out. Tony Atlas is eliminated. He doesn't get to do stuff. We get our first big name after Bret Hart, where Jake the Snake comes out to a huge pop. And I guess goes right into whatever storyline he has going on with Rick Martel, and they just start going at it. Seems like everybody who enters this Royal Rumble has a personal beef with Rick Martel. Does anybody else notice that?
Oh, he was an asshole back then.
He was an asshole.
His gimmick was an arrogant asshole. So he had a lot of beefs with everybody.
Every face that enters this beats the shit out of Rick Martel when they come into this Rumble.
He has a fragrance called Arrogance, and that's his thing. He sprays in people's face.
That's amazing. And then Hercules, who I've never heard of. I guess he's the tag partner of Paul Roma at this time. They're Power and Glory.
Yeah.
So our first tag team of many enters this match. There were a lot of tag teams in this Royal Rumble. I will give it that. Then Tito Santana, who I'm unfamiliar with, but apparently the crowd loves him. There was a huge pop for this guy coming out.
Yeah, Tito Santana was Rick Martel's former tag team partner. They were known as Strike Force. I believe they won the tag team titles at one point, but then, I think sometime in 1989, I think they broke up. Martel turned on Santana, and that's what started that current gimmick that he had going into the Rumble.
So So
The
you
model?
mentioned, yeah. So you mentioned the tag teams that show up. Like the tagline for this pay-per-view is friend versus friend, foe versus foe. It's every man for himself.
Yeah.
So
And that's kind of the motto for every Royal Rumble, technically.
it is, but this is the fourth one, so they're gonna make that the tagline.
I
They
will
put
say
emphasis on things like that.
we need some cool tag team names to come back because Strike Force is a great fucking tag team name.
Yeah.
I think Strike Force is technically under the Nazi
That's
thing.
probably something too.
Probably why it hasn't come back.
Yeah, maybe. And then we get the Undertaker, fresh in WWF, and
2 months in,
Second month.
instantly portraying him as an unstoppable force. Nobody can stop the Undertaker once he enters this fucking ring. Like they hit gold with this fucking character, keeping him as strong as they did over 40 years. He is the end. At the time, he is the end boss of WWF before Lesnar shows up. Like,
and they know.
But like the very first year, the Undertaker though, this was him throughout that entire year until he got to Hogan. Like nobody could stop the Undertaker. Like people would, I mean, you would have people punch him, and he would just kind of look at them like,
yeah, he knows a
Choke.
lot of stuff in this Royal Rumble.
like he was. I mean, they pretty much kept him strong throughout the Rumble, throughout that entire year, and that's why he was able to last as long as he did. And he kept reinventing that character.
Yep.
Yeah, and already he has the perfect facial expressions, the perfect like aura about him. I mean, the red hair is still a thing on the character right now, but I mean, it's so crazy seeing this because you're seeing the pre-legendary Undertaker, you're seeing the pre-legendary Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart before his match with Stone Cold that kind of propelled him into a new level. I mean, Bret Hart was always good in the ring. But there's that moment with Stone Cold just like is what cemented Bret as like a legend in the industry.
Yep.
I have a note here. Fuck Jimmy Snuka. Moving on.
Correct.
British Bulldog arrives next. He looks great when he's not, drunk out of his mind going into a match.
Yeah.
And I mean that's pretty much all I really know him for as a wrestler. I don't watch a lot of old school wrestling, but all I remember is that Bret had to guide his ass because he was fucking hungover.
I remember there was a
Bret
match.
did a good job of that too.
And that just solidifies Bret too as just being like a
Bret did a really good job of that.
He can literally guide a match with a fucking hungover moron and still make it gold.
Yep.
What were you saying?
There was a match later on where it was British Bulldog versus Shawn Michaels, and I think they unified the Intercontinental and European Championships at the time.
Yeah, I think so.
That was the match that I think of when I think of British Bulldog.
We have Smash from Demolition rocking his full-on gimp outfit.
Yep.
And then we have Hawk from Legion of Doom, where we're starting to see the tag teams start coming out. I know Legion of Doom is considered like one of the top wrestling teams in history, and I can see why. Like the crowd loves them. They have great offense.
They do great promos.
Yes,
great promos. Their gear rocks. Like I can definitely see why during this era, the Legion of Doom or the Road Warriors, whatever they were called at the time, were just as over as they were.
It was one of those things where they didn't even change the gimmick from like AWA or wherever they came from. They just like gave them a different name.
They just gave him a different name. It's like,
the
this
same
works.
Yes, because they're not gonna change. They're not gonna change it too much because if they did, then they wouldn't get over, and everyone knew that.
This is the energy that FTR took. It's like we're just gonna be ourselves. We're gonna change the name, but we're just gonna go out there and fucking tag team wrestle. And yeah, I mean, I'm starting to see like a lot of these guys. It's like I can see why a lot of these guys have earned their spot in history.
Yeah,
and on top of that, Demolition really did draw a lot of comparisons to the Legion of Doom. Because they had like a similar looking outfit and such. But I think they kind of stood out when Crush joined the team later on.
Yeah,
when he came like a 3-man group, and I loved them just as much. They were phenomenal, and also they had a really good theme. They had a really sweet theme song.
That was another thing. Nobody came out to music during this Royal Rumble.
Oh no, they didn't.
Which was a noticeable thing towards the end of it. I was like, I don't think I've heard a theme song yet.
Nope. Oh, that wasn't a thing till later on.
A young Shane Douglas is next. which was very interesting to see. And you can see like how young he is. I don't know how old he was exactly at the time for this, but like Shane Douglas before, I guess, his WCW run is where he really like picked up, I think.
No, it's ECW.
The ECW, yeah, he did go to ECW.
Yeah, he was the friend. This is before he became the franchise Shane Douglas.
That's right. So this is his start. I mean, lasts for a while in this Rumble, which is impressive. I mean, I say impressive like he's earned it, but like he got eliminated after some of the bigger names, which I guess is a blessing from management. We go to the next one where Macho Man no shows, probably because he has left the arena, worried for his life.
Oh, did they actually call out Macho Man and he didn't come out?
They said they said nobody showed up, and then they said we had the list in front of us, so as we get entries, we'll narrow it down to who is in here. And then they announced after the last one, it's like, that means that Macho Man did not show up. And I'm like, gotcha. Yeah, he's in another fucking area code right now. Like, this man is now...
He just cracked that man in the face. He's just going to show up in a Rumble after that with Warrior chasing his ass down.
This man does not want to be in the same state as Ultimate Warrior tonight. Like,
he booked the flight out of there. I guarantee you.
He's out. He's
he
gone.
Called the airport and then went out there and smacked him in the face. Like, he had his ticket ready to go.
Yeah,
like,
I need you to keep my jet warm.
Sherry was in the car waiting for him to come out into that parking lot.
That's some Bonnie and Clyde shit that happened.
And after that, Animal shows up. We have the full Legion of Doom. Taker gets eliminated, which surprised me. But then again, this is early on, so he's not like the completely unstoppable force. They team up to take out Taker. And then Animal gets eliminated, which means that Legion of Doom is no longer united. They lasted for about 5 minutes. Then Crush of Demolition. Oh, another tag team. I also put a note here. Another gimp suit, and everybody in this match is sweating. Like,
duh.
Everybody in this match looks fucking winded already.
Yeah, them lights are hot.
This was back during those like high heat lights.
Yeah.
They're getting cooked in there.
There's a sheen on everybody in this match.
There were no LED lights back then, so it was like everybody. It was like they were all cooking under like a fucking
it was heat lamp. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It was like they were like heat lamps you see in the kitchen. They just hung up over the ring, and it was like, oh well, here you go, guys.
There is a running theme in this match of Rick Martel going over the top rope, but then weaseling his way back in. Pretty much on every attempt to throw him out.
And every attempt to explain, nope, he's got to go over and out the ring.
Yeah. And after we get Crush, we get Jim Duggan, who I wrote here. This is probably the right guy to have on Patriotism, the pay-per-view.
Well, he also won the first Royal Rumble.
He did. But I mean, he's also probably a full-time wrestler at this point. He's definitely like that all-American character, and the crowd was definitely behind him as he marched his way down with his 2x4.
Yep.
And then we get Earthquake, who comes out with Jimmy Hart. And this is what I mentioned. These managers really cover the entire locker room, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, hey, we're going to have a bunch of guys who may never interact with each other, but I'm going to manage all of these guys. So, Jimmy Hart, a pretty big fixture in tonight's pay-per-view. I think at one point in this Royal Rumble, we have 3 managers walking around the ring. I think we have Mr. Fuji, the Power and Glory manager. I don't know who that was, and Jimmy Hart. And I'm like, couldn't they just fight? Can we just get like the managers fighting each other outside? That would have been a pretty funny addition to this, but again, probably not as creative as they become in the future.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Perfect comes out, and a really cool touch here is that Mr. Perfect takes his sweet time coming down to this ring. He's like, I'm not going to waste any energy. Everybody in there is running to the ring. They're fighting. I'm just going to saunter on down and then get in there. And I think this was during his heel run too.
Yeah.
Yep.
So definitely a good heel here. And then I put fucking Hulk Hogan. Fuck this era, man. Like,
we said that in the 2000s about John Cena.
And I'm like thinking about this, and it's like, fuck, this is going to be a John Cena moment, though. I didn't know how this was going to end, but the moment I knew that Hulk Hogan was on this card, I'm like, God damn it. Like, Yeah,
I knew Hogan was gonna win.
I hate fucking Hulk Hogan, man. Like,
But
Well, yeah, he's a shitty person.
He is, but like I said, he was the big dog back then, so he was McMahon's guy. Just like it was, McMahon has one every single era. He had Hogan in this era, and then it was like Stone Cold and The Rock in the Attitude Era, John Cena afterwards. Now we're up to Roman Reigns. So, yeah, and you knew he was winning this.
And we know that Roman is going to hold the belts to knock Hogan off that pedestal, and I'm like, I can get behind it. I just wish we didn't have to go through Cody for it. So, all right,
Cody will get his W back at some point.
He will. Haku is next. He's booed out the building. We get Jim Neidhart, who gets a lukewarm reaction. The Bushwhacker Luke moment, marches on down, marches into the ring, gets thrown out of the ring, marches backstage.
Back to the ring.
Which I don't know if it was funny. I don't know if it was planned or if they built it around him. Like maybe he was injured and they just didn't want him in the ring for a long time. So you're like, you know what, just go out there and we'll make it a little comedic moment.
Yeah. I know when Santino got interviewed about when he broke that record, that he was like, oh no, I was intentional. Like Kane just happened to be in the right place at the right time to eliminate him.
Yeah. Then we have Brian Knobbs of the Nasty Boys, which I forgot the Nasty Boys were a thing during this time frame. I thought they didn't come.
Dub.
I didn't think they came until ECW. That was the thing. Like, I thought
they were around at the time.
I thought they were ECW first, and then they came to.
No, they were in the WWF. Then they went to ECW afterwards.
Fair enough.
ECW did some stuff where they like even before the Attitude Era, they did a couple like cross promotional things.
Yeah. If I had written my notes on paper, this is where I put Stone Cold, cross it out, Goldberg, cross it out, the Warlord comes running down to the ring, bald man, tall, black trunks. I'm like, I had to do adult. I was like, I thought this was either Steve Austin or Goldberg at first. This man is just like the third most generic bald wrestler, man. Yeah, he comes out and then promptly gets eliminated a few minutes later. Now we're starting to narrow down the field. People are getting eliminated every few minutes.
Yep. Then we get to number 30.
Then we get the number 30, Tugboat, who I did not know who this was. So, yeah, a lot of. I'm making a note here. The selling's great. I can tell you
who he was in WCW though.
Yeah.
Remember who fell through the wall?
He was Shockmaster.
The Shockmaster. That was him.
That was him.
His career was ruined at that point.
Yep.
He was done.
Some notes here. The selling is great. These guys are probably legitimately winded though under those heat lights. You're probably right.
Oh yeah.
This is not selling. This is them just being fucking miserable in this ring right now. Piper is great on commentary. Martel is setting the record. And then we have Hogan in a 2v1 at the end of this match with Knobbs and Earthquake. And yeah. The 2v1 is beaten by Hogan.
Of course it is.
And
he immediately boots Brian Knobbs out of the ring during this 2v1. He boots
him out of the ring, and then he handles Earthquake, doing the Hulk Hogan versus Big Man trope that they keep doing. He does his usual power up. I mean, this is Cena circa 1991.
And this was like after Earthquake hit his finisher. And by the way, Earthquake really moves fast for a dude his size.
I was impressed by how fast he was for as large of a guy as he was.
And come to find out, he was like 28 years old. And I'm like, shit, 28-year-olds look different back then. They really did. But
how do we finish this big old patriotism pay-per-view with Hogan and the real American kind of vibe that he sets?
Yep.
I was tired by the end of this pay-per-view. I started at like 9 o'clock, so I watched this from like 9 to midnight the night that I watched it, and I'm like, I probably should have broken this up into pre-Rumble and then post-Rumble, or like pre-Rumble and then the Rumble as like a 2-day segment thing. I have nothing to say about this pay-per-view besides this is like the pinnacle of okay 90s wrestling.
Yep.
And storytelling.
This is definitely like they had some like, smatterings of good storytelling here and there. It just didn't deliver as an overall product, I don't think.
As an overall product, this pay-per-view was weak. Some of the individual storylines were strong. I mean, I think my moment of the night was Randy Savage knocking Jim Hellwig out.
Yeah.
Like, because you just don't see that shit anymore.
No.
Because that's actually an assault charge. I really liked the Rockers match. I think that was probably the best technical match on the card.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Virgil defying Ted DiBiase was a great story moment. So there were moments during this pay-per-view, but overall, yeah, this did not.
It was pretty standard.
This did not deliver to a modern wrestling fan.
It was just a pretty standard pay-per-view.
I'll preface it as that. We are modern wrestling fans.
Yeah.
We're used to the more modern style of fast-paced, high-action, spectacle. This is before that. Like, this is only a few years, I think, after the whole curtain of kayfabe was starting to be pulled back. Because everything was now coming together as, WWF, the territories were being absorbed. So people were seeing stuff on a national level now.
Yeah.
And that kayfabe curtain was being pulled back. They tried to keep it going, but then the steroid scandal will happen and just kayfabe's thrown out the, fucking window.
Yep.
And then McMahon took the company public, I think, towards the end of the 90s. And that really just kind of opened the door, along with the internet. And now pretty much kayfabe is in the dirt at this point. So everybody knows everything that's going on.
Yeah. And I think we mentioned it in the Discord. For the people that say we want wrestling to go back to the good old days, this is the good old days. I don't want this kind of wrestling again. This wrestling is not as entertaining as modern day wrestling. I mean, like I said, there's still some great stuff, but if I had to sit during pay-per-views like this with this pace of matches, I don't think I could do it. Like,
I mean, overall, this pay-per-view, and like many others back in those times, they were products of the time. And things were done a little differently back then than they are now. Storylines were put together a little more loosely than they are now. And I don't know, man. It's just, I guess these pay-per-views, they just don't hold up like they used to. They're some of them are still good to watch. But at the same time, you just got to go into it thinking, now, well, these are during the early days of pro. This is like before the big boom in pro wrestling.
Yeah.
Like the first big one with the Attitude Era and such. The Monday Night Wars.
Yeah, this was
before
Monday
Night. So you had to give it a little
War.
bit of leeway.
This was before the Monday Night Wars. So I think this was when wrestling originally was kind of in its like downturn in popularity before wrestling was quote unquote cool again because of the NWO and all that.
And to your point, WWE was about to start transitioning into the new generation, where the Bret Harts and the Shawn Michaels and the Diesels would all come into to the main event scene. And this was like right around the time the steroid trial happened. So yeah, this is kind of like we're kind of like seeing the end of one era and like the beginning of the next era.
When was the Shawn Michael Razor Ramon like a ladder match?
94, WrestleMania 10.
94.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we're going to see the evolution of some of these characters. Like the Rick Martel is going to become, the Razor Ramon. And then we're going to get Diesel thrown in. Shawn Michaels is going to go solo. Bret Hart's going to be kind of featured as the main guy when all the steroid wrestlers are going to have to leave for a little bit.
Yeah.
And we're going to see that. And then that golden age is going to start coming back. The golden age for a lot of people was 60s, 70s with all like the classic names. The people that you couldn't track down dark matches for. If it was somebody in Madison Square Garden, like I forget the Russian guy beating San Martino in Madison Square Garden, to like the threats of violence from the crowd because they thought a Russian legitimately won the title from their American hero. Like that people consider that the golden age, and by people I mean like Jim Cornette. But
yep. I don't give a shit what he thinks though.
I don't either. Like this is that weird transition between what people would consider old school wrestling and modern wrestling. Because in a lot of these matches, you start to see those styles kind of conflict with each other in a lot of ways, especially during that Rockers match. Like you start to see the appearance of like modern day like tag team, which is very interesting. I think it's a great pay-per-view to watch from like a history standpoint.
As a historian, it's very interesting to watch.
If I had to pick like what Royal Rumble am I watching tonight, it's probably not this one. But I mean, it was great seeing the history. I mean, I had never seen this pay-per-view. I had only seen moments from it. And for some reason, out of all the moments I've seen from this, I did not know that Sherry promo existed. which was absurd. You think more people would be talking about that? But I don't know. Like, what do you guys think about this?
I mean, that's all I had. There was some promise, but there was it's like it was a mediocre product, but that was the best that they had at the time.
Yeah.
Like when you look at it from a modern lens, yeah, it looks mediocre in comparison, but you know, you get there. You get there eventually.
I mean, it was what it was. You know, we just seem to kind of look at things from a modern lens, but I kind of tend to look at it from the lens that I looked at it through when I was a kid. You know, we were all into that stuff back then. Okay. Nowadays, when you look at it now, it doesn't quite hold up as well, like I said earlier, but you know, it was what it was, you know, and over time, I'm just glad that, you know, pro wrestling kind of evolved from that point to what we have now. Okay, where storylines got better, you know, the in-ring product got better, you know, and you know, wrestlers were less, you know, they were doing less steroids and they were incorporating more of, you know, their own stuff into it. You know, there was a more high impact style. Long story short, you know, these were what they were, man. But from a historical point, they're pretty important still at the same time, because you kind of get a glimpse of what that product was like back then. And you look at it now and you kind of realize that we kind of needed to walk in pro wrestling before we could run.
Yeah.
And right now we're in the running phase.
All I can say is thank God we didn't have another character based on anything Iraqi down from WWE.
And thank God they cut down on some of them gimmicks like Saba Simba and the Orient Express and whatnot.
And I say that it's like, man, this is the only pay-per-view that involves like an Iraqi sympathizer. And then I like flash back to Muhammad Hassan. And I'm like, we did not learn our lesson in WWF.
And then they did the angle with The Undertaker that happened the same week of a bombing. So
yeah, that was wild. It wasn't his debut. It was a thing with The Undertaker, right? Yeah. So a lot of stuff did not line up right for that guy. I'm kind of glad he's coming back as himself for wrestling. He's just showing up like here and there and like indie stuff in his area. Mm-hmm. But that guy's career, unfortunately, kind of got cut off at the knees.
It wasn't even his fault.
Circumstances out of his control.
It wasn't even his fault.
Yeah. But yeah.
That's all I had.
Hopefully we never have an extreme patriotism pay-per-view like this again.
Oh, we will.
I hate because you're probably right at some point.
All right. Well,
but
I think that's it.
I got nothing else to say. I mean,
I've got nothing.
I hope Nick liked this episode. I'm sorry if we were not as hyped for this pay-per-view as you were. Maybe you watched it growing up and all that is a close place for you. But I mean, a few of us have only watched more modern wrestling, so we've get to see things from a lens of more modern day sensibilities, I suppose. And but yeah, I mean, thanks for the recommendation. We loved doing this viewer request episode for somebody for a change. That is different. We've never done something like this.
Hey, if you guys want to recommend more for us to watch, we'll do it. Just, you know, we might not be so kind to it.
Yeah, if you're asking us to review a pay-per-view, we're going to review it from a more modern day sensibility.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to consider storylines at the time. We're going to consider the atmosphere at the time. But at the end of the day, gimmicks and stuff like that, it's like, oh, that was the sign of the times. It's like, yeah, but it doesn't mean it's great. Like,
doesn't mean it was a good thing.
Doesn't mean it's acceptable.
Right.
It's just nobody had the balls to say, Vince, no, don't do this. Right. So, well, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for being here tonight.
We'll see you next time.
Yeah. If you want us to review anything, message us on the Facebook page. The link tree should have on Twitter. The link tree should have both of those. And yeah, we'll see you all with our next pay-per-view video some point next month, I would say. Unless we get something else like this. And yeah, take care, everybody. We'll see you all next time.
Bye.
Have a good day. Good night.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The Squared Triangle. Find us wherever you get your podcasts under the Without Context podcast. Find us on YouTube at youtube.com/@WCNetwork.